latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion. There's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, good morning. We're coming to you live from Midwest Performance Cars in Northbrook, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour. And last night, CNN got together a bunch of Harvard students with a bunch of millionaire socialists, and they mainly talked about important ideas like why incarcerated felons should be able to vote, but they got to some other topics as well, including whether or not Democrats should move forward with attempting to impeach President Trump and remove him from office. And much like the caucus more generally in the House, the Democrat socialists on display on CNN were a bit split on the issue.
If any other human being in this country had done what's documented in the Mueller report, they would be arrested and put in jail. If there's going to be any accountability, that accountability has to come from the Congress. And the tool that we are given for that accountability is the impeachment process.
That was Tom Jode Warren explaining explaining the pro-impeachment position.
Yes, and then Amy Klobuchar, the senator, had a different take.
The impeachment proceedings are up to the House. They're going to have to make that decision. I am in the Senate, and I believe that we are the jury. There is a third way to hold this president accountable, and that is by defeating him in the 2020 election.
So there's I think it's not politically advantageous to try to move for impeachment. We don't have the popular support. So there's the 2020 resolution position. For more on this topic and what else Democrats have afoot to try to, to try to prevent the president from advancing his policy agenda, to try and move to frustrate President Trump. We're pleased to be joined by Sidney Powell, former assistant U.S. attorney, former appellate section chief, and author of the book License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice, which Inspector General Horowitz may be doing in his report that should be forthcoming in a couple of weeks as well. Sidney, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
And so with respect to impeachment and the volleying back and forth over whether the Mueller report contains the trail of evidence that could make out an obstruction of justice case, what do you as a former prosecutor say?
It's a big zero. It really is. In fact, you only have to go to page 9 of the second part and see where they talk about potentially relevant statutes in an ordinary case to know that they have absolutely nothing. They can't cite a single obstruction statute that actually applies because there isn't one.
So when Elizabeth Warren says any other person would be under arrest and facing prosecution right now, she is wrong.
Totally wrong. I mean, you never see a prosecutor talk about potentially relevant statutes in an ordinary case to talk about a violation of law. You just don't. I mean, if there's a legal violation, you say this conduct is in violation of, and explain how. They can't even do that in the report because it isn't.
So from reading
the instances,
go on.
The instances they say they examine are absolutely absurd. None of them rise or come anywhere close to anything constituting obstruction of justice.
Now, from reading the report, do you think Robert Muller and his team did a thorough job?
Oh, I think they went way, way, way beyond thorough. I think they were incredibly petty, and the report was written to smear President Trump as much as it possibly could and be as embarrassing as it possibly could.
What's an embarrassing point for you?
As much red meat to the Democrats as it possibly could.
What section or what part did you find embarrassing to the president?
Well, all of his personal comments and anything and everything. He's been the most transparent. No president has ever waived executive privilege and attorney-client privilege like that. The only reason we know about a lot of the comments in there are because he waived all privileges. which I find extraordinary.
Do you think
If I had been his lawyer, I wouldn't even have allowed him to do that, because the office of the presidency, any client has to be able to have a box in which they can express their frustrations and say things and not have it, publicly outed, or at least hopefully so they can make sound decisions without being under a microscope about everything. But God bless him, he put it all out there.
President Trump has disputed some of the characterizations of what he said contained in the report, but the initial word is that the response that Rudy Giuliani was crafting or leading the crafting of from the White House to the Mueller report is something that may never be made public. Do you think that's a mistake? Should the Trump White House issue a formal public response to the report or move on?
Not necessarily. I think they can probably move on.
And what did you make of? I'm sorry. What did you make of the blaring headlines yesterday? The subpoenaing of Don McGahn, former White House counsel, to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. I mean, bringing Mueller before House Judiciary or other committees, and Don McGahn and others who were material to the Mueller report. Do you expect that to shed any new light on this matter?
Lord, no. I mean, if this is the best Mueller and his team can produce after everything they did with grand jury power and all the witnesses they interviewed, and I guarantee you they dug for everything they could possibly find, there's nothing else there. I mean, Mr. Nadler can knock himself out for the next 10 years trying to find something, and it's not going to be there.
There's some suggestion, including by me, that with this now passed, the real exposure, the people who have real exposure are the former Obama administration officials, as well as the senior leadership of the FBI in particular, but certainly not limited to the FBI, including the Department of Justice, and what the decisions they made and the bases on which they made them during the 2016 election cycle. What do you expect from the forthcoming Inspector General's report from Justice and the matters still pending on criminal referrals with respect to Andy McCabe and possibly others?
I think those are going to be very serious. We have to look back. I don't know whether y'all have ever addressed this, but there's a 2017 decision by the chief judge of the FISA court. The Carter Page FISA application was rushed through the FISA court right before Admiral Rogers exposed all of the abuses in the about queries and the fact that Mr. Comey had given illegal access to the raw NSA database to 3 private contractors beginning as early as 2015, maybe before that. I couldn't tell because of the redactions in the FISA court decision of April 2017. So somebody is going to be in one mell of a hess over all of that, and it's not going to be pretty because she talked about serious Fourth Amendment violations, the FBI having approved it, lawyers having approved it, and all of the about queries that led to the unmaskings, the illegal leaks. Mr. Horowitz is investigating those. I think that may be the first report out. And, of course, that could involve who leaked the classified information as to General Flynn. That's a felony. There are all kinds of felonies involved by the upper echelon of the FBI and the DOJ and Obama administration people in all of their conduct and surveillance abuses.
If you were representing Carter Page, would you be looking to file a civil suit against the federal government?
Yes. I think Mr. Page has been treated absolutely abominably, but so have other people.
Yeah.
And it was worth noting, too, that there have been multiple people, including Bob Woodward, no less, suggesting that the garbage, quote-unquote, his word, Steele dossier needs further investigation, exactly how that was used in CIS intelligence estimates as well as in FISA court applications, and not just limited to Carter Page, but others.
Oh, exactly. There were also FISA applications that were denied earlier in the summer. Everybody needs to see all of those, how they changed along the way, who made each of them up. I believe that Nellie Orr, through the NSA database, I think Fusion GPS was one of those 3 private contractors, and probably CrowdStrike, mining the NSA database for political opposition research, and had a hand in crafting the crap that went into the Steele dossier as much as Mr. Steele did. And remember, it came from multiple different places. I mean, one thumb drive came to Jim Baker, general counsel of the FBI, through Mr. Sussman, a lawyer at Perkins Coie, of all places. Some came from Sidney Blumenthal at the State Department. They were pushing it around from different places to make it seem like something. And I bet it all came from the same origination point.
Well, hopefully we're going to find out in short order. She is Sidney Powell, former assistant U.S. attorney, former appellate section chief, author of the book License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. Sidney, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on